Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and it's my pleasure to have back on island and back on our show a friend of the Marianas, Dr. Jennifer McKinnon. Jen, welcome back to Saipan.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So give us again, for those that may not have caught one of your earlier shows or the many projects you've done on Saipan, your official position.
Okay, so I'm a professor in the program in Maritime Studies at East Carolina University, and I do underwater archaeology. So I have been working out here since about 2007 on sites underwater, but also on land. We've worked on cave sites, World War II cave sites, and also on Chamorro and Carolinian maritime heritage type history as well.
Some people may connect your name with the World War II, as you said, Maritime Heritage Trail in Saipan, which really, I think for a lot of us, especially those of us that are not divers, really opened our eyes to the wealth of sites that are not in plain sight like the ones we normally know. There's a lot of stuff underwater.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been spending a lot of time out here just talking to local divers, identifying sites, and recording them and learning more about the history. We developed the Maritime Heritage Trail, which, a lot of divers kind of knew some of the sites, but it gave more information to dive shops for tourism purposes, because these sites are important to the economy. They bring in divers, they bring in snorkelers, they bring in people that are interested in the history, and so learning more about them and sharing that history about the site, but also how to protect them and make sure that they're sustainable for the next generation to utilize as well. So we work on those kinds of angles as well.
So you and your team this time are working on a project that is related to that, but also something a little bit more personal. What brings you back to Saipan at this time?
So we are here on a Defense POW-MIA accounting agency mission, and that is the branch of government that looks for lost service personnel from previous wars and brings them home, recovers their remains and brings them home to their families. And so we've been working with DPAA. We started in 2018 trying to identify some aircraft. So we have Hellcats from World War II. We also have missing Avengers, POW-MIA Avengers, which is the American plane, and a Dauntless.
And that's all here in Saipan?
That's all here in Saipan.
Okay.
So we're here working on a Hellcat site that crashed during World War II, and we're looking for the pilot. So we know that 22 Hellcats crashed around the island in Saipan, and 4 of them have pilots that are still missing. And so we are working on that site to recover the lost pilot.
I was really surprised when you reached out and mentioned that you were working to recover remains, because I was just assuming that as a Commonwealth or a territory of the U.S. that, they would have all been brought home, so to say. But I guess that we're still working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's over 80,000 still lost in the Pacific that haven't returned home, and that's a lot of families. And I know that, that Saipan is patriotic, and there's a lot of veterans that serve. And so the thing that I think is really interesting is that people here locally can understand that it's really important for us to continue to look for our lost personnel and bring them home and repatriate them. It's an important mission, and one that we've been privileged and honored to be involved in.
Can you start us off? Well, I guess we've already started, but can you tell us a little bit about the Hellcat itself. Maybe start us off with where this site is, and then what part the Hellcat played in World War II for those of us that are not familiar with the aircraft.
Absolutely. So the Hellcat site that we're working at is somewhere between the Managaha Island and the dock, the sub dock. So it's about 10 minutes out. So our boat is out there every day from 8 to 4 o'clock.
You're working on your suntan?
Yep, we're working on our suntan. And so it's located out there. It's in about 27 feet of water.
Okay.
And it's heavily broken up. So it went into the water, high velocity, high impact, and crashed. So it's not something that you would recognize like the Emily or the Jake or, some of the other sites. The Hellcat was super important in World War II because it was a bomber pilot. And so they strafed the island before the invasion and spent a lot of time sort of knocking out installations and sinking ships and other aircraft, Japanese aircraft in the water. And that sort of laid the path for the amphibious invasion, days later.
Now, you have an interesting story about how you first discovered this site or got to this site when you were working on the Maritime Heritage Trail.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Back in 2009, I was interviewing Masa of Masa Dive, who's pretty well known on the island, and I take notes as I'm talking to folks about sites out there, and I wrote down that he knew where a Hellcat was. And then fast forward to 2018 when DPAA said, we're looking for Hellcats, can you help? I looked back at my notes and realized that he had told me that. So I went to his shop again in 2018 and chatted with him, and he said, sure, I can show you where it's at. So we went out. He went out on his boat. We went out on our boat and got out onto the water, and he was like, it's somewhere out here, which, as you can imagine, the ocean is big. But he kind of gave us a line, between a certain landmark on shore and Managaha. And so we put some divers in the water and towed them behind the boat with their snorkel gear on. And after a couple passes...
So high-tech.
So high-tech, yeah. Most people think we're using, high-tech equipment. Sometimes we do, but this did not require that. So it was like a couple passes and somebody said, I see aircraft, and they dropped off and we went down, and that was the site. That was the Hellcat site.
What does it look like?
So the main features are a landing gear and a tire still attached. It's kind of cool because you can still read Goodyear on the tire.
Wow.
Which is, that gives you some of the feels.
Yeah.
And then the engine is there. It's heavily degraded because it hit so hard and so fast that some of the pistons are actually laying out on the site. And then the propeller is 10 meters away from it. So to the untrained eye, it's very difficult to know that it actually is an aircraft, but, we spent a lot of time mapping it and making sure that this was the site that we were looking for.
How did you connect that this was the plane that might actually have remains?
So we have a list of the losses, and usually with that there comes aircraft crash incident cards that tell you about the pilots and, when they were last seen, what mission they were on, and we had 4 sets of those. So we do a lot of historical research and also work with DPAA historians who do that research as well, and narrow it down, because some of the cases say last seen over Mucho Point, heading down, so we know where Mucho Point is, so it's easy for us to kind of narrow in the scope of where they might be.
Oh, okay, so you have details about where the plane crashed, which helps you identify which plane it was.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. What is the process then for your, I guess it's an excavation, well, only, would you call it an excavation if it's underground? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the process there?
Yeah, so we started with trying to...
underwater, sorry.
Yeah, we started with trying to determine how big the site is, because we want to know, what the extent or the perimeter is. So we did metal detection on a grid sort of system to see where stuff is buried underwater. And then we laid out a baseline, a 40-meter baseline, and put 2-meter by 2-meter square grids down along that baseline, and started excavating in the area where there was the most material. And we try to go in the area of the cockpit. So, the evidence that suggests that it's the cockpit are things like plexiglass or knobs or things that we found, while we're excavating. So we're looking for the pilot specifically, so that's where the pilot was last. And so targeting and moving into that area is what we try to do with each unit. We assess all the artifacts that come out, which drives us to determining where we put our next unit.
And then with the things that you take out, as I understand, once they're exposed, for example, to the air or something like that, what's that process and what will happen with all of the artifacts you're recovering?
So we will rebury everything on site, with the exception of if we do find the human remains, the personal bones, teeth, that kind of stuff, or life-saving equipment, which might have been on their body, gloves, helmet, mask, that kind of stuff, or any kind of material evidence like a wedding ring or a personal watch or something like that. That would all go back to the lab in Hawaii to be reviewed. But everything else that we have excavated, we actually package back up into a wire mesh, we call it a burrito, and sew it up, and we put it back into the unit, and we put the sand right back on top of it. So we leave the site like we found it, with the exception of gathering it all together and putting it in a bundle.
Very technical, but there is actually a real human side to what you're doing. And when we come back, we're going to talk about one of your partners working with you on the project and really what this means to them and the people on the team. We'll be back with more after this break.
In Northern Marianas Humanities Council, Bulaguinahanya puri historian Marianas dan kultura. Sinyon soda esisihanan formasyon gi zon mami website nmhcouncil.org, pat bisita gi YouTube, pat Facebook. Guahaloque diferentes clases la blunesinya un fan. In Northern Marianas Humanities Council, hazuzura todo y experiencia tautau.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. We are talking with Dr. Jennifer McKinnon about a project underway in the Saipan lagoon with the U.S. Department of Defense, POW-MIA agency? Accounting agency. And in this half of the show, it's my pleasure to introduce Alan Williams. He is the Dive Control Board member of an organization called Task Force Dagger Foundation, or the Task Force Dagger Foundation, and they are collaborating on this project. Alan, welcome to Saipan and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Task Force Dagger is about?
Sure. So Task Force Dagger Special Operations Foundation is a foundation that supports all special operations community service members and their families. So they are supported through different programs that we have, whether it's an immediate need, because during a time of war, there's the unthinkable tends to happen. So, and people aren't always prepared for it. So we help them when those times come to be able to get through those times as well. We also have our health initiatives, because a lot of awareness that we need to bring that these soldiers and veterans are bringing back with them. They may not be visible wounds, but the wounds are still there, whether it's PTS or from traumatic brain injuries or whatever. And then we also have the rehabilitative adaptive events. And what we do there is we try to get a service member back into being able to do things again, because when they leave the service after so long, they really have lost their way. They don't know what's going on or what they can do. So we help them out with that, and we help them heal. And we tend to want to make sure that they can heal with their families. So when we take them on trips or we take them on events like Dagger Dive, which is our signature event, every year we take 12 to 14 families down to Key West, and we teach them all how to scuba dive. So that's the entire family, because we look at it and we think that if the service member is wounded, injured, or ill, so is the family, because now they have to go through and live through all the stressors of life that sometimes worse than what the veteran or service member is going through at the time.
All the divers I know, I mean, they feel different when they're in the water. It's like heal. They say it's healing. It's like it's an escape. It's a lot of things. What is the connection of Task Force Dagger to this excavation project?
So with this one, we with one of our students who was a special operations service member, he decided that when he got out, when he was injured and he med-boarded from the Army, and he decided he wanted to go back to school, and so he interviewed with Dr. McKinnon, and from there it just kind of flourished. He was like, well, he's explaining how he works with another organization with the foundation, and from there, the relationship just grew.
So are your team members, well, first of all, tell us a little bit about your team that's with you.
We have a group of personnel with us from anywhere from Army Green Berets, Army Rangers, Army PSYOPs. We have a couple of Navy SEALs that come along with us, some Air Force combat controllers. So just about anybody that is in Special Operations that falls underneath Special Operations Command, we cover, and we got some Navy EOD folks as well, retired Navy EOD folks. So we have quite an eclectic group.
What role are you playing? Is it like, are they learning how to dive while they're doing this, or have they already been trained and they're volunteering their time to do this as part of their rehabilitation?
So they all are volunteers. Absolutely, all of them are. Now, some of them learned how to scuba dive through our Dagger Dive program, but most of them are here to help find that mission, purpose, and focus that they lost when they left the military. So that's our, for the foundation, programs like this, it helps them with that mission, purpose, and focus, because when they leave the military, they're just kind of like kicking the can, like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
I've been in the military for 20 plus years, and now I'm out, and what am I going to do?
Right.
So it's, for a lot of us, it's near and dear to our hearts, because for one, a lot of us are used to, a hostage rescue type situation in the military, and that's what we do. Now, it's still another way that we can give back by coming, and helping repatriate somebody from the greatest generation of the world, and during World War II, service members. And that's just, and for every person out there on the boat, that's the number one priority.
Have you been a part of a mission, so to say, where you've actually recovered remains?
Not as of yet. This is our fourth mission out here that we've been working on. So, but whenever we don't, that's a good thing as well.
Exactly.
Because we're ruling out where we don't have to look anymore.
Right.
So we'll continue to rule that out and then just go on to the next.
Yeah. What are the dates of this project? When did you guys get here?
So we got here about a week ago and started getting set up, and we're going to be excavating for these next 2 weeks. So through the rest of this week and the following week.
Any thoughts from you or the other members of your team on what it's like being in Saipan, either as the best kept secret in America that most Americans don't know about, or even as an important World War II site?
This is my fourth time back. I love coming here.
Okay.
The people here are...
Well, welcome back to you, too.
Thank you. The people in Saipan are absolutely amazing. I have yet to meet somebody that wasn't just as beautiful and nice as can be. It's a wonderful place, and I love it. I look forward to coming back here every whenever we can, whenever we have missions coming to come back and do this. I'll continue to be here. And I know a lot of the other folks will, too. So it's, coming here is an awesome experience, and it really enlightens people, because they were like, my God, this is probably one of the most important things I've ever done in my life. But they don't talk about what they did in their past, as far as the military does. They just here thinking, my God, I get to help repatriate a World War II service member who's been missing in action for 75, 80 years. And that is the only thing that's on their mind at the time.
What other kind of activities do you guys do besides dive excavations and things like that to rehabilitate your members?
We have, there's a dude ranch that we're partnered with, and we send people to a dude ranch.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah, the families are great. It's like, sometimes the kids are like, you mean we have to go do chores on a ranch? And so they don't
Is
really
there
know what to think.
Wi-Fi? Is there internet service? Oh, I love it.
So that's why the kids are like, really? But sometimes there is, depending on which ranch they go to, it is. But yeah, we do that. There's a couple of other ones. We have some other dive related stuff too. Or we had winter projects too that we would send people to. Ski events or the same ranch. We'd send them to the same ranch, but it'd be wintertime wintertime events instead.
Okay.
So, which is still it's a lifetime experience for a lot of these people, and they have spent so much time overseas that when they get a chance to spend time with their families and not think about anything and not have the stressors of home climbing up their backs and everything, it's a phenomenal thing to see them rebond again and just actually have a good time and talk about something other than the stressors that they normally have to deal with at home.
Well, we definitely welcome everybody on your team, and thank you really for coming and putting your time and your energy and your effort into this job here in Saipan.
Oh, thank you so much. Like I said, it's a blessing. We love coming here. There's not anybody out there that's going to tell you that we don't have a great time when we're here. The VFW will be, supporting us come Friday. They're going to have a dinner for us and a meal, and we're going to go down there and have some fun with them. But everybody is very supportive. Can't ask for anything better.
I want to get back to the actual project, but before I do, based on your experience, Alan, we have a lot of vets and service members in our community, and what advice might you give for families that are welcoming veterans back who may have these experiences that you've talked about? What can you say to them?
Have some patience. Patience goes both ways for the service member and for the family. So service members are coming back to something it's old, but it's something they haven't been around for so long. And same with the family members. They haven't been around their loved one for so long. Things change. And
always.
Especially when they are, when the service member has to leave and go to an environment like they may have to go to, things change. So take it in and don't discount it as to be anything, because there's a lot of people that are very resistant to things that can happen to a person while they're deployed to combat, whether it's PTS or is a traumatic brain injury or anything like that. We have issues with it all the time, but it just takes a little bit of patience. And by all means, if you need help, ask for it. It'll always be there. We don't want to have to worry about. I just wish just thinking to yourself, I wish somebody would have just asked for the help. That's not what we want. We want to be able to head it off at the pass before it ever gets to that point. So talk to people. If you don't have somebody to talk to that is on the same wavelength as you as far as what you went through, find somebody. There's going to be somebody around that you can talk to that makes it much easier to get it out.
Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. Thank you.
Jen, what does it mean to you on a personal level to be a part of this project?
I mean, it's pretty incredible to do this kind of work, especially working with Task Force Dagger. We call the team the Joint Recovery Team, and that's got like a triple entendre, so it means that they're recovering personally and developing, new mission, purpose, and focus. We're potentially recovering a lost service member, and repatriating them. And it's joint across the forces as well. Lots of guys are coming out. And it's really cool to work between university and also military and veteran. It's not often that we get the chance to do that. And so to see what it means to them makes it so much more meaningful to me to work on that. So when we go through the training and I talk about what maritime archaeology is, the study of history and our past, this is actually putting it into like an application that's real world and like meaningful for, for the veterans, but also for the families who are eventually going to get, some rest in peace and know where their loved one was. So, it definitely gives me a lot of different levels of feelings, and it makes me feel like the maritime archaeology, underwater archaeology we're doing is purposeful and meaningful.
What will happen when you wrap up here in Saipan, whether you do or do not actually recover remains on this mission?
So we will return any material evidence back to the lab in Hawaii, and they'll assess that. And then they make the call on whether or not we need to come out for another season or whether or not there's another site that we might want to start investigating, because this isn't the only aircraft loss in Saipan, as we know.
Well, thank you both for your work, number one, and your time. Any closing thoughts or final thoughts before we go? Alan?
No, I'm just glad to be here, and Saipan always welcomes us back every year, and it's a blessing to be here and to be able to be partnered with ECU on a mission that means as much as it does to not only myself, but to all of our recipients and our participants, and as well as the foundation itself. So this is just one program that we have, but the good that comes out of this is incredible.
Absolutely. It's tangible and it's intangible at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Jen?
Yeah, for me, it's, returning back to my second home. So I love coming out here and seeing old friends and colleagues and coming back here and also continuing to share that work that we're doing, not just flying in and flying out. I want to make sure that people know what we're doing and that we'll be back again this year. We've got a couple more projects, and actually that will involve some local veterans, hopefully. So we'll be back for more work, and I'm just happy to be here now.
Yeah, good to have you back. And thank you for sharing about your project. Wish you the best and safe diving.
Thank you so much.
Our guests today have been Dr. Jennifer McKinnon of the Program in Maritime Studies at East Carolina University, and Alan Williams of Task Force Dagger, doing an underwater excavation in the Saipan lagoon. This has been Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
Your Humanities Half Hour is a production of the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, funded in part by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.